particularly in small businesses. Meantime, polls show the public souring on the president's handling of the economy.
And Christine Romans joins us now in studio. And Christine, we're learning that companies like Apple already moving some of their production to the U.S.
Yeah, remember the first Trump administration, there were tariffs against China. So you saw a lot of companies start to diversify their supply chains to other places like Vietnam, Indonesia, and India. India, where the vice president was this week, of course, it's a major democracy. It's an American ally. It doesn't have a trade deal with the U.S. quite yet here, but there are reports this week, ending the week, that Apple would like to have its U.S.-made smartphones, U.S.-sold smartphones made in India by the year 2026. The company not commenting directly to us about those reports.
We know you will follow those developments. Christine Romans, thank you so much. Here in New York, Luigi Mangione appearing in federal court today. 26-year-old pleading not guilty, this time to those federal charges in connection to the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. NBC's Sam Brock has more on what's at stake as prosecutors claim the death penalty.
Inside a lower Manhattan federal courthouse where no cameras are allowed, Luigi Mangione's first court appearance in weeks, now wearing prison garb, produced this exchange with the judge, fresh off a federal indictment. How do you plead? Mangione responding, not guilty. The plea comes after an early April declaration from Attorney General Pam Bondi on Fox News.
The president's directive was very clear. We are to seek the death penalty when possible. If there was ever a death case, this is one.
Mangione faces 4 federal counts, including murder through the use of a firearm, which makes him eligible for the federal death penalty. In the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, New York State doesn't permit the death penalty. But as the public support for Mangione is manifested in the form of checks and major dollars, the government argued in an intent filing overnight that his case merits capital punishment because he sought to, quote, amplify an ideological message and to provoke broad-based resistance to the victim's industry. Mangione's attorneys have called it a political stunt and today pushed back on the idea of holding a state trial before his federal trial, telling constitutional issues will be impacted if we are forced to try that case first.
It's going to be really tricky for them to get an impartial juror. If they've already had this case litigated in the state.
And Sam Brock joins us now with more. Sam, so much going on here with these dual cases. What's next in this case?
Sure. So to circle our calendars for the federal case, the judge even said that they're going to be reconvening in December with the idea for the trial to start in 2026. To offer some clarity as to why you're seeing this sort of issues of concern from Mangione's attorneys, what they are saying is that if the state case proceeds first and there is a conviction that could prejudice the jurors or jury selection for the federal trial, could impact the federal trial once he has already been declared guilty of murder. That's their primary concern. The judge then today said, look, we're going to set this based on whether there is another case or not. I'm just going to act like there isn't, and this is the only case. It doesn't seem like she's particularly sympathetic to Mangione's attorney's concerns. Stephen?
So many eyes on this one. Sam Brock, thank you. In just a moment, with the jury visiting the scene of the alleged murder of Karen Reed's boyfriend, the evidence that they saw in person, plus the body camera footage just released showing the moments police shot the wife like these are band members. And George Santos back in court, new details on his tearful statement to the judge just before his sentence. We're back now with new developments in the Karen Reed murder retrial in Massachusetts. The jury taking a field trip to the scene of her boyfriend's death and hearing more dramatic testimony that suggested Reed had been in a fight with him in his final hours. He's been laying Karen
Reed's widely watched retrial unfolding outside court today. Is to understand the evidence from Julia during the course of the trial. In an unusual move, the jury visited the Canton, Massachusetts neighborhood where Reed's police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, was found dead, though the spring day, in sharp contrast to the conditions his body was recovered in back in 2022. The prosecution and defense urging the jurors to look closely at the black Lexus returned to the scene that Reed is accused of hitting O'Keefe with for leaving him.
The
defense also pointing jurors' attention to the size of Holmes' front lawn at the time, belonging to a police officer.
Second floor.
Reed's attorneys argue O'Keefe was not hit by a car, but injured by someone else indoors and then moved into the cold. Reed opting not to join the jury on their visit to the crime scene today. I don't know back in court, more insight around what happened between the couple right before his death. After tense text exchanges between Reed and O'Keefe were read by a trooper on the stand yesterday.
Second one was arguing, fighting. It's been weekly for several months now.
Today, a paramedic says Reed told him
This conversation she had with her husband at the time was an argument. I don't feel like I'm not ready to find out the details of what you said. And Emily Ikeda joins us now in the studio. So, Emily, we know from previous interviews that Reed said she should not have been driving the night O'Keefe's body was found. Do we know what now?
had struck O'Keefe with her car in a drunken rage. Well, today a pathologist took the stand and said that her blood alcohol levels were slightly above the legal driving limits, and that was hours after the couple had actually been in the car and had gone to several bars. Now, the defense, in their cross-examination of that witness, had suggested that Reed may have had some health conditions that impacted those levels. Court will resume Monday.
Thanks so much. Well, we're back in a moment with George Santos sentenced in prison time. Congressman convicted of fraud and his Tier 4 statement in court. Plus, an NBC News exclusive on the ground on an eye-opening look at how the country is changing and how women are defying the oppressor's doomsday. Much more from Tom Young, Steve Roll, and well ahead. Tom?
Stephen, thank you. We're going to bring you the story of a little boy who asked a question the Pope years ago that melted hearts around the world. That young boy is now a young man, and he tells us how the Pope's answer changed his life. When Top Story returns from the Vatican. Top Story reporting from the Vatican. We're standing in front of St. Peter's Basilica once again tonight, which has already seen such an overwhelming pouring of grief and gratitude at those crowds. The 250,000 people standing in line for hours to pay their respects to Pope Francis. Some coming for thousands of miles away. But in a few hours, this area will truly transform. We can expect hundreds of thousands of people to fill this square as they say their final farewell to their beloved Pope Antonio's funeral. Leaders are already starting to arrive, including President Trump, who landed here today. And of course, when the ceremony ends, the next chapter begins as the cardinals gather here from around the world and set out to elect their next holy leader during the inclusive and secretive process known as the conclave. I'm joined now by Deborah Likoff. She's an NBC News Vatican analyst and a contributor who's been helping us out so much during coverage here. Deborah, so great to see you tonight. Top Story. Talk to our viewers. What are some things that you're going to be looking for during that funeral that will sort of separate this one and show how Francis put a stamp on it?
Certainly Pope Francis has always been sort of the Pope of simplicity. He's been so humble, and he basically revolutionized the idea of the papal funeral by certainly maintaining those traditions, but really streamlining it, making it much more simple. So it's not so much about a sovereign being about a pastor. Francis really had to be. So that's what I'm really going to notice.
How is he doing it? How would people notice that in Mass?
Well, if you were to look at the liturgical text, the original version to what it became with Francis, the length is significantly reduced. And for instance, he's even with the Litany of Saints, where you hear the people praying to saints, he's added some of the saints that are closer to him, in a more personal way, which is very close to back and canonized. So we're going to see some of those others, for instance.
So those tomorrow will likely come in that procession. People in the streets, that's what we're expecting, and heading to the Basilica where he will be entombed there. What are you looking out for in those movements?
It's going to also be very moving because Pope Francis has such a pastor's heart for the poor and the needy and the marginalized. So even when his body will reach that basilica that you mentioned, Santa Maria Maggiore in the center, there will be poor people there to be there at that moment when his body arrives before his burial. So that's going to be very moving. And even when the motorcade goes through Rome, they pass by the Colosseum, so it's going to be very visually evocative.
And then finally, expect the college to make that announcement sometime after the funeral. do you think we'll hear about that? And when do you think the conflict will start?
Oh, that's a guessing game. Who knows? But at the same time,
Yeah, that's what you're hearing.
at the same time, certainly, these cardinals, many of them have to go back eventually to their dioceses, et cetera. So I think they're not going to be looking to draw things out. They want to go back to their people, but they also want to link the Holy Spirit guide them toward the right.
And start as early as the second week of May, possibly, right? As early as that.
It could start even sort of the end of the first week. The goal is that a conclave would need to start between 15 and 20 days after the death of the Pope. And then Benedict has finally amended that, saying that if everyone agreed to start a little sooner, that could happen too. But generally, that 15th day is when things are likely to happen.
We're so great to have you here. Tomorrow during the funeral as well. That's special coverage. Again, thank you for joining Top Story tonight. We're going to have much more from here at the Vatican later in this broadcast, including a new interview. The man who sort of defined Francis' biggest moments. After he asked him whether his father was in heaven. But for now, we want to go back to Stephen Roth for some of the other stories we're tracking today. Stephen?
Right, we don't want to miss that one. Tom, thanks. We want to turn out the Top Stories news feed, beginning with a manhunt underway in New York City after a commuter was fatally stabbed on a subway platform during rush hour. Police say the fight started on the train after one passenger stepped on another shoe and spilled out onto the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall subway platform. The 38-year-old victim was stabbed twice in the chest and was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. And a sad update to a story we brought you earlier this week. Princeton student has been found dead after he was reported missing on Saturday. Princeton spokesperson saying 23-year-old Blackburn was discovered in a lake next to the university this morning. Crews began a water search on Monday after Blackburn's phone was found hanging near the lake. He was set to graduate next year. So far, there have been no reports of foul play. A former Disney employee is facing 3 years in jail after he altered the menus at Florida's Disney World. Court documents saying Michael Schur hacked into Disney's computer system to change menu prices, add profanity, and change allergy information. Before Schur was fired by Disney for misconduct, he was responsible for creating and publishing those menus. He pleaded guilty to the hacking and was to pay $600,000 to those victims. And NFL legend Warren Moon giving the Tennessee Titans new quarterback the surprise of a lifetime. Video showing Moon giving #1 draft pick Cam Ward his blessing to wear his formerly retired #1 Titans jersey. Ward set single-season records for passes and touchdowns while playing for the Miami Hurricanes. Moon's #1 jersey was retired back in 2006 when he was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Well, in New York today, the former Congressman George Santos sentenced to more than 7 years in federal prison. That's after he pleaded guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. The judge handing down the maximum sentence, saying that Santos, who has been caught in lie after lie over the course of his career, did not show remorse for what he done. NBC's Raheem Ellis reports.
Disgraced former Congressman George Santos once again surrounded by a crush of cameras, walking into a federal courthouse in Long Island. For inside, he was sentenced to 87 months and 7 years in federal prison.
He told lie after lie until it caught up.
For a minimum sentence of 2 years after pleading guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft last summer.
I know that my actions caused disappointment, frustration, and a loss of faith in
But prosecutors argued he was never truly remorseful for his actions, which included both relief fund fraud and credit card fraud.
is to seek out it's on fire.
Citing his recent podcast called It's on Fire, which they called a tone-deaf effort to continue turning lies into dollars.
You know when I used to drink apple tea back in 2009 when they were so relevant?
In 2023, Santos became just the 6th person to be expelled from the House of Representatives after serving his Long Island district for just over a year. His ethics committee doing its own investigation, finding he used campaign contributions for personal expenses, including Botox treatments and payments to the adult website fans.
I just discovered what OnlyFans was about 3 weeks ago.
From the outside Santos's political career was riddled with lies and controversies, ranging from the mundane to the absurd.
Did I embellish my resume? Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
Falsely claiming his mother died in the 9/11 terror attacks.
Down there, the attack.
To waving away claims he performed as a drag queen in Brazil. After his departure from the halls of the Capitol,
My fellow Americans,
Santos pivoted to personalized videos on a website campaign, claiming to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in profits. Today, he had no worries for reports or protesters as he left the courthouse in silence.
Enrique Veneros joins us from its studio. Santos wanted to hear today. We did see that video walking out of court. Nobody wanted to show up.
He is on bond for now. He's expected to surrender to authorities on July 25th to begin serving at 7.
Thank you. Turning out to top stories, global tensions escalating between India and Pakistan as soldiers for briefly exchanged gunfire in the disputed Kashmir region. This comes after a mass shooting left 26 tourists dead in Indian Kashmir on Tuesday. India is blaming Pakistan for what it's calling cross-border terrorism. Pakistan has denied any connection, and a previously unknown militant is not claiming responsibility. Both countries are taking retaliatory measures, including opening bases. And Brazil's former president, Fernando Collor, is behind bars 2 years after he was convicted on corruption charges. The Supreme Court ordered him to be arrested and began serving a prison sentence stemming from that 2023 conviction. He was found guilty of money laundering and receiving millions of dollars in bribes from a then subsidiary of a state Collor is sentenced to 8 years and 10 months in prison. His lawyers have been requesting appeals since the trial. He served as president from 1990 to 1992. And saying one man's trash is another man's treasure is taking on my legal meaning and not begun. The Dutch town hall says they likely threw away a print by iconic artist Andy Warhol. The 1980 silkscreen of former Dutch monarch Princess Beatrix is just one of dozens of missing works. Officials say that these pieces were accidentally disposed of with bulky waste. The Dutch authorities say they do not expect that to be found. Well, tomorrow begins another round of talks between the U.S. and Iran for that country's nuclear program. Tonight, our Richard Engel is the only Western reporter inside Iran. Richard has visited many times, but this time he found a country in transition in ways that surprise most Americans.
Much of the world only knows Iran for its military. Its missile strikes on Israel, its anti-American and strict Islamic laws. There is another Iran few people get to see. It's difficult to gain access here, especially for journalists. Boarding visas are rare, but the view is worth it and is surprising. It's 9 a.m. and Iran's national hockey team is training. Even though this is the week in Tehran, the team is going strength to strength. Last year, Asian Cup. Do you think slaves understand this place?
Staff, what? To show
Yes, are thought multi-dimensional and how they're generally portrayed. And change is happening. On the streets of capital Tehran, women increasingly dare not to wear the Islamic headdress or hijab. It's illegal for women to show her hair, but so many women are doing it, the government isn't doing much to stop it, at least for now. It's happening in rich and poor neighborhoods across the country. And it didn't come easily. Women protested and faced police violence. are seizing personal freedoms with those in charge, like your power. They're pinning their hopes that the United States Iran's nuclear program could mean the end to sanctions that have kept Iran isolated and its economy in a prison. The Azadi Innovation Factory is known as Iran's Silicon Valley. It's full of young entrepreneurs who are working on everything from AI and fintech to web design. But for now, it's mostly just for the internal market, making it nearly impossible for startups to gain any traction. But that doesn't mean they're not trying. What is it like living in a box?
It's really difficult to work in this situation, but if we get outside the box, we can also, have a bright future ahead of us.
Relations with the United States, relations with Europe. What most people think of Iran, they think everyone hates the US, everyone hates the West.
Well, I can assure you, and I can guarantee this completely. I'm an ordinary person, and we have nothing. We have like no problem with people in other countries. We actually love to see them as guests, as tourists here.
Iranians are proudly confident that if given a chance, this country will thrive. Even Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Government is showing more flexibility within limits. I was allowed into Parliament, generally off limits to foreigners, let alone an American journalist. I met Ibrahim Rezai, a member of Iran's National Security Committee, who said Iran doesn't want a nuclear weapon and is open to allowing inspectors. What is Iran hoping to get in these negotiations? Our main demand is the lifting of all sanctions, he said. Push this. The president has announced it, and we are ready now, he said. But I wonder if Iran's new openness will last, and why it's happening.
Search for a Iran suspect in a totally unrelated case. ABC's Dana Griffin. Is this real? Come on, the gun! You're gonna get shot!
Tonight, newly released footage showing the heart-pounding standoff between Los Angeles police
It's the police! Drop the gun!
and Jillian Schreiner, the selling author and wife of Weezer bassist Scott Schreiner.
Is there another Julie?
The confrontation unfolds last month in her Los Angeles backyard.
Fire, shot fired.
As officers were in for several minutes, officers yelled from behind a fence, repeating commands to drop the weapon.
And she's up there. But she just left it out.
Instead, in this video, zoomed in and annotated by police, they say she grabbed the gun, pointed at them, and fired.
She ran the
Police fire several rounds hitting Schreiner, who appears to calmly walk away from the officers. Police say this 911 call was placed after the shooting. They said there were 3 men and one of them shot her. Right now. Police have not identified people speaking to the dispatch. Police say Schreiner surrendered to officers an hour later. She's seen in this body camera footage lying face down in the middle of the street, arms stretched out wide. She's injured but alive.
shot her.
Officers approach and handcuff her. 2 officers cleared those rounds, hitting Schreiner in the shoulder. Police say no one else was hurt. The 51-year-old was treated at a hospital and booked on suspicion of attempted murder of an officer.
And Dana Griffin joins us now from Los Angeles. Dana, we're also getting news about the physical evidence police allegedly recovered at the scene. What are we learning?
Yeah, so Stephen, investigators say they recovered a Glock 9mm handgun Schreiner was armed with, as well as the spent casing you see here on your screen. Jail records show that Schreiner posted a $1 million bond and is just before April 30th. So far, no criminal charges have been filed by prosecutors. We're still reviewing the evidence in this case. Schreiner's manager telling NBC News she has no comment at this time. Stephen?
Dana Griffin, thank you. When we return, we take you back to the Vatican and the moment with Pope Francis that inspired the world. We speak to the young boy at the center of it.
Domestic violence
And we're back down here outside the Vatican with Pope Francis's funeral now just hours away. Hundreds of thousands have passed through St. Peter's Basilica to pay their respects. Remember the pontiff. And since the Pope's death, a moment from years ago has been shared around the globe once again. It involves the Pope, a young boy, and a simple question. That young boy is now a young man, and our Ann Thompson spoke to him today.
An ordinary parish in Rome, far from the grandeur of the Vatican, 8-year-old Emanuele Balderi was scared and emotional. Moment, it was a tip